ears closed, guys? And we are going to start off by talking just specifically about adding. So we're going to do our adding steps. So if we are adding mixed numbers. And we'll do example 1. So if this is our example, 2 and 5/6 plus 1 and 3/4. And today, guys, there's no negatives. We don't have to worry about integer rules at all today. Got it? Okay? So 2 and 5/6 plus 1 and 3/4. There are 2 different things that you can do. 2 different ways that you can solve it. I'm going to pretty much show you the way that I think is the easiest. That does not mean that you have to do it that way. Is that understood? You can do it another way, and I will show you that in a second, okay? So what was our first step with adding and subtracting fractions? So what do you think my first step is going to be here? So step 1, find the LCD. Find that least common denominator. I have a 6 and a 4. What is it, you guys? 12. Okay? My whole numbers are going to stay the same. So I'm going to keep my 2, but my denominators are changing. So that 6 becomes a 12. That 1 stays the same, but the 4 becomes a 12. And just like we did with fractions, you do the exact same thing with mixed numbers. So how do I get from 6 to 12, everyone? And whatever we do to the bottom, we have to do to the top. So 5 times 2 is? And how do I get from 4 to 12? So what do I do on top? So the new numerator is? So step 2 is rewrite the fractions to have the same denominator. So rewrite the fractions to have the same denominator. All right, so far nothing's different, right, guys? Yeah. Everything's in the same, correct? Okay, now, what was our next step when we did just fractions? Added what? And then we kept the, so that's still step number 3. So still add your numerators, which is what? 19 over. So step 3 is still add the numerators and keep the denominator the same. Add the numerators and keep the denominators the same. What also should I do a part of step 3? What do you think? What do you think, guys? Add the whole numbers. So in part of step 3, you're also going to add the whole numbers. When I add my whole numbers, what am I going to get? Yes, what is it though? 3, because 2 plus 1 is 3, right? So what do we have right now? 3 and 19/12. What is always our final step with fractions? And change it to a mixed number. So step 4, change to a mixed number and simplify. Doesn't matter. Do the same thing. So change to a mixed number and simplify if necessary. 19/12. What's that as a mixed number, everyone? So if 19/12 equals that 1 and 7/12, what do I now need to do? Add the 3 to it, which means how many whole numbers do I have? So I get 4 and 7/12. Second. Not right now, in a little bit, okay? Lelia. Yes, so this is one way. This is the way that I think is the easiest. It is not the only way. What do you think is the other method? They're both mixed numbers, so what could I change them to? I can change them to what? What's it called? What can I change it to, guys? That's that word. So, your other way that you can do this is you can take both mixed numbers, change them to improper fractions, get a common denominator, add them, subtract them, and then follow all your steps. You can do that. Is that understood? You should still get the exact same answer. I do not care which way you do. Is that understood? I just think this way's easier because I don't have to go from mixed to improper and then go back from improper to mixed. Does that make sense? But I don't care. You do what works best for you. Understood? Understood? Yeah. All right, let's do a subtracting problem. So subtracting steps. Because subtracting is a little bit different. They're very, very similar, but just a smidge different. All right, and here is an example 2. 5 and 1/5 minus 4 and 3/4. Because it's just like adding, there's going to be a lot of steps that are exactly the same. So what do you think my first step is going to be? Still going to get a common denominator. What is my common denominator, everyone? What is it? So I'm going to keep my whole number and then change my denominators to 20. And what do you think step 2 is going to be? Find the numerators. So everyone, how do I get from 5 to 20? Whatever we do the bottom, so what's the new numerator going to be? How do I get from 4 to 20? Everyone? So what's my new numerator going to be? So far, step 1 and 2 are exactly the same, right, guys? So up top, step 1, step 2, I'm just going to write same as adding. That way we're not having to rewrite it all out. Step 1 and 2 are exactly the same as adding. Find your least common denominator, rewrite the fractions to have the same denominator. Step 3 is where it gets different. Okay? Normally, when we did this, we just added the numerators, right? So what do we want to do now? We want to subtract the numerators. Okay, so when I do that, what are my numerators? 4 and 15. Can we do 4 minus 15? No. So what do we have to do when we subtract? What's that word? Okay, but hold on. What's that called? I'm teaching you a different way right now. But we will talk about that way in a second. What's it called if I were to take, there it is, someone said it. What's it called? Borrowing. You guys remember that word? Okay, so we have to borrow with fractions. And I think some of you have already said it. We borrow from the whole number, and that 5 becomes a what? Because you're taking 1 away. And then we have to add a whole, okay? But a whole is not just adding the number 1 like it is with normal subtraction problems. I want to add a whole fraction, so we have to add our denominator to our numerator. So we're going to take that 20 plus 4, and that is, so my new numerator is 24. Does that make sense, guys? Take 1 away from the whole, take your denominator, add it to your numerator, and you get your new numerator. That's how you borrow with fractions. Now are you able to subtract? Okay, what is 24 minus 15? Over, because we keep our denominator the same. That hasn't changed. Now what do we need to subtract? Your whole numbers. What's my new whole number? Minus is, do we need to write that? So what's my answer? All right, let's finish writing these steps out. Okay, so subtract the numerators and borrow if necessary. Keep the denominators the same. And subtract the whole number. You guys should, I don't think, ever need to go from improper to a mixed number when subtracting. I don't think we'll ever see that, okay? So your last and final step is to simplify if necessary. All right, let's say borrowing confuses the crap out of you and you don't get it. What can you do? Okay, so once you get a common denominator, instead of borrowing, change them to a mixed number. So let's write that down. If you don't want to borrow, change mixed to improper. And subtract. Remember, all answers must be written as mixed numbers. So you must change improper back to mixed if that's the direction in which you go. Totally fine. You can totally do that. If you do not like borrowing, change it to improper, subtract, change it back to a mixed number if necessary, simplify if necessary. But if you don't have to borrow, don't borrow. If you don't have to change it to improper, don't change it to improper. Don't do more work than you have to do. Does that make sense, guys? Okay, Lelia. Absolutely. You gotta figure out what works for you. So yep, try both. Decide which way you like best. And then do that way. Absolutely. Yep, over there. All right. Ready for a few more examples, guys? Let's do them on our tables. I suggest you keep your notebook out